Hello, welcome to Accountancy Insights. Today, we're talking about uncertainty. We're all working with it, so how can accountants best contend with it, professionally and personally? We're going to hear first from Riaz Shah OBE. He's a former partner at EY and professor of practice at Hult International Business School. He'll be giving us his assessment of the key areas of uncertainty facing accountants right now in terms of both their day-to-day work and their longer-term careers. And with us to look at the emotional costs of uncertainty, we have Paul Guess, Case Management Officer for the accountant support charity CABA. What sort of mental health toll is uncertainty taking in all its forms, macroeconomic, job-related and personal, on accountants right now? And how can CABA help? Riaz, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
Should we start with uncertainty in terms of accountants day-to-day? Because I am guessing that clients' expectations are evolving fast right now.
Yeah, I don't think clients just want compliance anymore. And we in accounting, we've been talking about this shift, how we've got to move to being trusted business advisors for a long, long time now. But I think that time is absolutely now. We have to make this shift. Clients are facing huge demands, and that is creating a lot of uncertainty for them. And they're looking for people to give them a little bit of certainty through this. And we're the people who could do that.
Yeah, that's the point here, isn't it? They're facing uncertainty. Accountants are there to help them with it.
Yeah.
They want more with less, though, don't they?
They do, and perhaps they should get it. You know, if we've got AI coming along, why can't we use that to make us more productive and spend our time with clients really helping them on their business issues, really helping them with things like cybersecurity or scenario planning or workforce planning, those sorts of things that we're very capable of doing.
I want to talk more about AI, but first, actually, I did want to press you on the expectations point, because certainly in terms of time pressure, I think that really does contribute to accountants' difficulties, doesn't it? The ever quicker response time expected by clients.
Yeah, and that's true for all of us. I mean, we're all under this sort of 24/7 working, far from making our lives easier. In some respects, technology has made our lives more difficult, and hence the increase in mental health issues that you're going to be talking about later. That's partly because we're always on. Our clients are expecting that, and our clients do expect us to serve them, really economically. But I think we can be doing ourselves a disservice here, because if we focus on things that are commodity type services, compliance work, and that's all we focus on, then of course clients are going to demand lower and lower fees. But if we start focusing on being their business advisor, being there for them, being a CEO is a lonely job. If we can be there for them as the external trusted advisor, then they don't really think about our fees. They think about our value.
Just looping back to what you were saying about tech and AI being part of the answer for accountants in terms of delivering for clients. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Well, I think certainly from a professional point of view, AI gives us the opportunity to make the entire industry much more exciting for people, much more attractive for people. When I was an audit junior, I did, accounts debtor circularizations, 12 times or so. And how many times did I really need to do that to get it? Probably 3. And everybody says across the profession that we take really bright students and we dumb them down over 3 years. So I think AI gives us, and technology generally, gives us this opportunity to change the model entirely, to reinvent accounting really, to help us get smart graduates or school leavers and train them much quicker, having them do much higher level work much quicker, which they're fully capable of, not dumb them down. And that makes the industry much more attractive to them, because they're talking to clients at a higher level right from day one.
It's interesting how ideas and thinking are evolving around AI, because initially, I think, for a long time, it's been talked about as a threat, a direct threat to accountancy. Audit, the jobs at the front end of the profession will disappear. Lots and lots of chat about that. Jeremy Hunt, talking about, the end of accountancy, rather more encouraging, and Kemi Bay not disagreeing and saying there's always, I think your line, there's always going to be room for expert analysis and advice.
Absolutely. But I think he's right in a way. What he's saying is that the accountancy profession isn't going to be attractive anymore, or it's going to get lots of stuff is going to get replaced. That's true if we imagine the accountancy practice as it is today. That's why we've got to reinvent accounting. We've got to reinvent the profession, really. And by the way, he was telling people to go into IT. I mean, that's the worst thing you can go into right now because IT and coders are being replaced much quicker than accountants right now by AI.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is fair to say, graduate intake, that is falling, though, isn't it?
I think there's a reason for that, though. KPMG's graduate intake this year is down 29%. Why did they do that? They also shifted and increased the number of school leavers they're taking on. Why are these firms massively increasing the number of school leavers they're taking on? It's because I think they don't trust that the universities are producing people with the skills that they need. They trust their own L&D more than they trust the universities. I spend a lot of time in education. I run 4 schools in London. I am really trying to, in my schools, change what we teach so that we're not a school that teaches stuff that's relevant for the Industrial Revolution, but for the 21st century. And, I find that I think all of us have to work with our educators and drag them kicking and screaming into the modern age.
It's interesting you say that because I know Hult Business School, where you have a role now.
Yes.
That's all about learning by doing, isn't
Absolutely.
it? That's the philosophy there.
Yeah.
So what might that mean in terms of training young accountants?
You mean in universities or in...
No, I think on the job.
Yeah. I think on-the-job experiences become much more important. If I remember when I was a junior, I remember those times when a partner asked me to join him in a cab on the way to the client and talk to me about what he was going to try and do. And then afterwards, how do you think that meeting went? Those were the things I remembered the most rather than doing my debtor circularisation for the 12th time. So I think learning by experience is very important. The other thing that I think is important is we have to shift how we give knowledge to our people in a very different way. And I think the universities and schools have to do the same. And this is moving from what to think to how to think. So rather than teaching people, here's a bunch of knowledge, my job is to transfer the knowledge in my head over to your head in this 1 hour by talking at you and you taking notes. Much better for us to do that in advance with some learning on demand whenever you can do that. And when we're in the classroom, for us to spend time saying, what happens when this goes wrong? Let's talk about some case studies where things go wrong and let's discuss those things instead. And that builds judgment and it kind of accelerates the experience that you would normally have built over 3 years. That accelerates that. It builds judgment earlier.
And tech can play into some of the learning that I think used to be about sheer repetition for young accountants, can't it? So scenario planning, scenario exercises leveraged by tech rather than actually just doing the same thing again in a physical sense.
One of the things we found in my old firm is that people were frightened of giving others feedback because they thought they might be, giving them negative feedback is quite a scary thing. We developed an app where an avatar was the person that you were giving the feedback to and would react to you based on what you said. And then it would tell you another way of maybe having that conversation.
Did that work well?
Yeah, it was very cute and it did work well. And I think it builds those. And you can apply that to all sorts of things, fee negotiations, for example.
Taking some of the stress out of actually trying to do it real time.
Yes, and or learning it in a book or a classroom.
So obviously we have the new ACA now, and it's specifically trying to address the changes we're talking about. Presumably you're hopeful that it's going to address some of these deficiencies. Yeah,
I think, focusing on things like tech and ethics and sustainability is really, really important because that's all part of the shift that accountants have to make to being business advisors rather than purely being accountants, rather than just focusing on the accounting rules and the tax rules. This is moving into much more business issues. I think it's great.
Looping back to our kind of core theme of uncertainty, we've talked about uncertainty for early stage accountants or even, graduates considering a career in the profession. But it isn't just them, is it, facing uncertainty? Because I'm thinking about, later stage professionals. The profession looks very different to the way it looked when they started, doesn't it?
One thing about uncertainty I think is quite funny is I've met some people in their early 50s and they're saying, I'm just going to keep my head down and stay away from all this until it disappears. It isn't disappearing. This is here to stay. And actually, I think uncertainty is here to stay. And that's quite tricky because as human beings, we really value certainty. It's one of the core sort of social needs that we have. And if I look at some of the partners I knew 20 years ago, they always felt they had the answers. Any question their team would have them, they would be able to give the answers.
Yes, with age and experience.
Yeah. And here we are now where we don't have the answers. And that's a really uncomfortable feeling, that uncertainty and not having the answers to give your team. And what I say to those leaders is we've got to shift from having answers to asking the right questions, because the answer might not be in you. It might be in the diverse set of experiences that you have around the table, you talking to other people, you talking to younger people, you talking to people in a different industry. That's where the answer might lie. So this shift from answers to questions is really, really important in dealing with uncertainty.
That is a radical perception change, isn't it, for accountants mid-career who started out with the idea, quite understandably, that they would become more expert over time. They would have the answers by the time they were mid-career, and they would go on to become more and more expert and more senior and better remunerated, and that's how it was going to go.
Yeah.
And now they're confronted with this very unsettling reality that that's not the case, actually. It's a perpetual learning scenario. So, I mean, obviously, you were head of global talent learning at EY. Mm-hmm. It's all about what the employers are going to do for them, isn't it? Because accountants can't do this by themselves. How should they be supporting those people?
Well, I think you have to paint a picture for everyone that this future is more exciting, that there is new stuff to learn, and that can be exciting. How do you make learning interesting and exciting? Again, if you shift from the boring old classroom stuff to avatars teaching you how to do fee negotiations or on-demand learning that you can just do 10 minutes of learning before you see a client, that becomes much more useful. So I think micro-learning becomes important. And what we found was group learning is important as well. So giving people an opportunity to share their ideas about their experiences. Because if you know somebody more experienced than you is going through a tricky time shifting as well, then you're more likely to go, oh, okay, so if he's going through that, it's okay for me to go through this.
There's a budgetary end to this, isn't there? There's a tough end to this, because obviously learning and development, tight economic times, those budgets have been squeezed. But from what you're saying, actually, that's exactly the reverse of what needs to be happening right now.
Yeah. In accountancy firms, we need to treat L&D just like pharmaceutical firms treat R&D. It's our research and development arm, is our learning and development. EY used to spend, spends $500 million a year on learning and development. And I think that's about the right level. Giving everybody 60 hours of learning every year, that's the right level. In fact, I think it's got to increase, delivered in a different way, maybe through lots of apps and on-demand learning. But I think people have got to learn and invest in themselves to make this shift.
Is that actually happening on the ground in the profession? I mean, we've talked about the firms, but what about individual accountants? How can they best prepare themselves for this ongoing uncertainty?
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking about this for a while now, ever since I started teaching executives. And I always say that I think there's three things that senior people ought to be thinking of, or all of us ought to be thinking of. And that's firstly to be more curious. However curious you are now, how can you be more curious? How can you ask more questions? How can you experiment with AI? How can you share your learnings, run what-if analysis, that sort of thing? How can you just be more curious? That's the first one. And the second one is to be more bold. It's not enough just to read more stuff and understand more. You've actually got to do something with it. And I think you've got to kind of move beyond the numbers as an accountant, pilot new services, work with clients and say, what if I did this for you? Would you find that valuable?
What sort of things?
Workforce planning, for example, scenario analysis. With things like tariffs, we're finding in some countries entire businesses are losing access to their biggest market in the US with a tariff of 30%. Suddenly they're having to change. We should be at the forefront of that. We should be talking to clients and saying, by the way, what if this happens? What are you going to do? So I think being more bold, and finally being more human. Because in the age of AI, the worst thing I think we can do is to try and be more like the AI. That's not going to work. AI will do what it does, and it will continue to expand what it does. I think we ought to double down on what makes us uniquely human. Those things around caring, empathy, mentoring others, diversity, listening to other points of view, really kindness and showing empathy in crisis. Then we're kind of going through a crisis at the moment. Some people are finding all this change too much, and showing empathy for that is a uniquely human skill, and that's what I think our leaders should be focused on. So how can leaders be more curious, be more bold, and be more human is what I always say.
You're going to be speaking about all this, aren't you, at the ICAEW annual conference?
Yes, absolutely. On the 17th of October, when the annual conference is in London, I'll be running a session on how to thrive in this age of uncertainty.
Thanks so much for being with us, Riaz.
You're welcome. Good to talk to you.
Now, Paul Guest from CABA has been listening to Riaz with me. I thought it was interesting what he said about the cultural direction the profession needs to take. I'm guessing that chimes with you.
Absolutely. With points like be curious. When we're talking about mental health, that is forefront. If you're not being curious about yourself, you're not really looking at yourself, you're not seeing where you are at any one time, you can't see the danger signs coming so easily. And of course, be human. That warms my heart when I hear someone, certainly of Riaz's calibre and his experience, speak in terms like that. Using the word empathy, that is so strong, so powerful, so important. It's a key part of mental health and mental health support. So hearing these being set out as underlying principles of the way the future should go, it's very, very encouraging.
By an educator.
Absolutely, yeah.
Accountants come to you for mental health support and assessment. With uncertainty all around in the ways that we've been discussing, are more of them coming to you now than they did when you started?
Absolutely. We had a bit of a dip in 2020, which I think we'd all understand why. Suddenly, it's not possible to sit in a room with a counsellor and discuss your problems. So the industry had to catch up. So across 2020, things like telephone and video counselling became the norm. And we have seen since then a steady increase in the number of people coming to us. We've also seen an increase in the severity of the cases. So whereas before they could be handled with just like a few sessions of telephone counselling or whatever we recommended, we're now working with psychologists. We've increased the number of sessions. We've got a new provider. So we are seeing an increase in the number of people coming to us, an increase in the severity as we're trying to fill the gap between waiting for local NHS services to be available. And we're also seeing a drastic increase in the number of sessions we're offering. So we've gone from 5 or 6 a person to up to 8 to 10. So it's tripled, quadrupled. It's been very encouraging. Hopefully it's part of people becoming more aware of mental health. And following COVID, I think that's certainly a message people have been getting to. They were locked up in their homes for months on end and stuck with family members. And even after Christmas, we start to see a little bit of strain. So after months and months of enforced lockdown, people really started to become more aware of their mental health, of their danger signs, and started looking for what could be done to help them.
There's that, as you say, there's the root causes, the understanding, the awareness, the willingness of people to come forward. But there is also increasing pressure for people, this through line of uncertainty. I think I'm right in saying you don't directly ask people why they've come to you, do you? So I suppose what I wanted to ask you was, is your sense that it's personal or professional drivers, or a combination of the two?
That's correct. Part of the reason we don't like to interrogate clients when they come in, making that first step, admitting that you need help and admitting it's in an area that for so long has been quite stigmatised, that is an act of supreme bravery on their part. We don't want to put another block in their way, that they have to have this conversation, they have to justify why they need help.
Right.
So we are there to help them make that transition from inquiry to an expert in the field. So when I do speak to clients, because I do get a mix. I get a mix of people who just want to get the service. They don't want to discuss it. They're not ready yet. Then other clients will use that first conversation with myself as their first session. They've got someone who is prepared to listen to them.
Right.
And that is such a rare thing. People in conversations are just waiting for their turn to talk. We've all had this before. So having someone who's prepared to just listen, reflect back. When these people who do feel the need to talk to someone, who have taken that opportunity, they can be very forthcoming. And it is quite a privilege to share some of the stories that I get told. And I am hearing stories from all walks of the accountancy life, from students, new starters, to those who've been established a long time or even retired. The age group has diversified quite a lot over the past few years.
Has it? Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, because we think of this as something that is more common amongst younger people.
Yeah, that's certainly true. We do I'd say that most of our clients at the moment are student or young starter. However, the older age groups have been filling up the ranks a bit more. I do speak with people quite regularly in their 50s and 60s, sometimes even older.
Are they bringing different problems?
I think so, yeah. Because of what their stage in life is, because of their experience, they are more likely to bring issues about their children. They have, for the most part, dealt with the initial stresses of training, of having to learn and work and balance a life. So part of that stress has gone, but it's been replaced by the everyday that they've got children, they are in positions of responsibility and power, there's more expectation of a certain level on them. So it does change, but there is always a common thread. There's always a sense of family that's strong, a sense of just trying to do the best they can and trying to get something out of the world. As you say, the world is so uncertain, just trying to make some sort of sense of it. And when you put on top of that all the everyday pressures, the individual pressures, everyone has an individual experience. So no two stories are the same. We see at CABA, through all of our services, we challenge the stereotype of the chartered accountant every single day. There is that certain image.
So tell me, what do you mean?
Someone who is affluent, someone who has all the money they can ever need, someone who has made their career and they know what they're doing, they're very in control. But life doesn't work that way. We have people who have had life happen to them, and it doesn't matter how much you've saved for, how much your pension pot is. If there is a family emergency and suddenly you need to build a new room on your house to accommodate someone, all your plans are out the window. And that's where we can come in to try and give some support across various levels.
Bearing in mind everything you said about not interrogating people about causes, presumably for some, I'm guessing perhaps for many, work-related stressors are compounding, if not the original cause of their problem, they're compounding their difficulties.
Oh, absolutely. It is a common theme.
What sort of things do they talk about in relation to work?
With that one, it mostly comes from the student level.
Right.
Because it's trying to balance getting the work done, the studying, and having a life outside of it. It is mostly the pressure and absolutely the uncertainty of what's going to happen. We've been talking about how AI is looming on the horizon. And yes, there are innovators like Riaz who are talking about how we can utilise AI in a more positive manner. But does the ACA student know that?
So do they see it as a threat?
I believe so, yes.
So that's a real failure of communication, isn't it?
Yeah. It's one of those things that we can feel like we are spreading the message, but are we? Unless we are checking in with the person we're talking to, how can we be absolutely certain that the message we're trying to give is being received in the manner we intend it to? So there's always more that can be done to reassure people that, yes, the world is changing, the industry is changing, but there is still a place for you. There is still a chance for you to grow and to have the sort of life that you are hoping for. It might look a little bit different. We've all got to adapt, but there's still hope.
And talking of difference, neurodiversity, specifically perhaps ADHD, are you seeing many people coming to you to discuss issues around that?
Oh, yes. Over the past few years, our neurodiversity support has gone out of the roof. It's incredible. This year, I've had 400 inquiries for mental health, which has already beaten last year's total. In November, I am fully expecting to spend more time dealing with ADHD referrals than I am with mental health.
And not all youngsters?
Not all youngsters, but for the most part, our service is designed to support students who are doing their ACAs in order to get the certification they need for reasonable adjustments in their exams.
OK, that's specifically in the area of neurodiversity and ADHD.
That's correct. Yeah. So far, we are always looking at how we can expand our service. We are looking at what the community needs. For example, when we changed our counselling so it dealt with more severe issues, we are constantly asking ourselves, is what we're doing appropriate? Is it enough? Are we filling in gaps that don't need to be filled in? But the problem is, along with mental health, neurodiversity is so in demand. The awareness has become so prevalent that the NHS and local services are struggling.
Yeah, they're overwhelmed.
They really are. Yeah. I spent a long time working with the NHS, so I have a lot of love for them. But I don't think it takes a bold person to say that they are overwhelmed.
Yeah, under-resourced and can't contend with it. So you're picking up that slack as best
you
can?
Some of it we can, yeah. We can pick up some. We don't cover medical costs. And that is one thing that can come as a bit of a contention when we're looking at ADHD, because we can provide the certification saying, yes, you've got ADHD, but we can't help you with the medication. And it can be a point of frustration. And this is what I mean when we're saying we're looking at how we can improve our service. Because if someone comes to us at the moment with ADHD certificate, they still have to go through the process of going through the NHS.
Right.
And they've still got that multi-year wait time. So it's not perfect. It is a relatively new service, which we brought in response to the demand from the ACA student body. And hopefully we can make it even better for them.
So tell me about the services you do offer. Obviously, we've talked in general, but you offer counselling.
Yeah.
You offer help with employers around reasonable accommodations. And?
So much. The simple answer is, if someone has any issues, talk to us.
Financial support?
We do financial support. We have a shortfall grant service. It is means tested. We have advisors on benefits. We have advisors on debt management. We have advisors on care. So if you're looking after an elderly relative or someone who needs extra support, we can advise on that. We have a legal advice helpline. So we have two streams of support. There's support officers who do the benefits, the in-house things. So they are the experts on the subject.
Yeah.
And
very
then
complicated areas to
Yes,
navigate.
absolutely.
Yeah.
When I hear them talking about what they know, I am always dumbstruck by just the information they can pluck out of their head and having to keep up with the latest legislation. It's incredible.
So they can smooth people's paths through those very difficult areas.
Hopefully, yes. And then we have our partners such as counselling, neurodiversity, our legal advice helpline. And we also have a career coaching service for those who are unemployed or facing redundancy. So essentially, talk to us, tell us what the issue is, and we'll see what we can offer to help with it.
Yeah, it's very encouraging. I did want to ask you, I don't know whether you heard the last episode, but we talked about whistleblowing.
Yes.
And obviously, it goes without saying there can be very major consequences for people involved in all of that. Do you see clients who are involved in whistleblowing cases?
We do, but unfortunately, when we speak to people, it's usually because something's gone wrong. So the stories we get are of the ones where it hasn't ended as happily as it might. We don't know the full story, but what I see certainly ties in with some of the things that Andrew was saying last week, that 70% of people who go through the process feel victimised. That's not positive in any regard. It's a worrying number. And he also mentioned that people don't go out intending to be a whistleblower. They're just looking to raise an issue that concerns them.
Yeah, protect their organisation.
Yeah.
Right or wrong.
You can understand the stress, the anxiety this causes, because you don't know if it's just going to be okay, we'll get that sorted, or if you're going to be sat in front of a committee with the media looking into your background. It adds uncertainty upon uncertainty. And you've got to try and deal with that on top of everything else that's going on. When people do whistleblow, they are basically externalising themselves. They're taking themselves out of their social group, which is a dangerous and threatening thing to experience. But in that time, you've also got to wonder, what about their friends? What are the people they have worked with for potentially years and years, friends, colleagues? Suddenly, they're on the outside.
The knock-on consequences.
Yeah. And are those friends going to be implicated by the accusations? There's so much to do to take on. And I believe Brendan mentioned about anonymity. Fine, you can have it to start with. But eventually, we all have a right to face our accuser. So that's going to go. So there is no real solid story that we can look to say that this went well. When we look at Carillion, that became a major thing. I know the name of Emma Mercer. Why do I know the name of Emma Mercer? But I do because she raised an issue and suddenly, and this is what people are seeing as examples, the threat of being a whistleblower is so real that there is no reassurance. Whereas what we can do as CABA is offer some of that support.
So they can talk to you about that.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned anonymity.
Yes.
I take it your service is entirely
Completely.
anonymous.
Yeah. We work in exactly the same way you'd expect of a counsellor or a psychologist. We are under no obligation to report any details to anyone, and that includes the ICAEW. All of our clients are treated with complete confidentiality. There is the caveat of the traditional safeguarding that if we are concerned of a threat to your safety or that of another, but you'll find that with any counsellor you speak to will follow the same process. We do have a safeguarding responsibility and we do take it very seriously, but for 99.9% of our clients, confidentiality is absolute.
So for anyone listening to this right now, thinking, this sounds good, this sounds like something that might work for me, what's their first step?
If you just contact us, I believe that there will be our contact details in the show notes.
Yes.
And then we'll be in touch. It really is that straightforward. There is absolutely no obligation to follow on with any inquiry. If you can reach out to us, we'll come back to you, ask some questions and see what we can do to help. No pressure, complete confidentiality.
Just an exploratory chat.
Yeah. And I can honestly say my colleagues are the loveliest people. They really are.
That's good to know. Paul, thanks so much for coming in and telling us all about it. It's great to know it's there.
Thank you for the opportunity.
As Paul said, take a look at the show notes attached to this episode on your app or the ICAEW website to find links to the resources he talked about. Next time, we'll be taking another look at cybersecurity in Behind the Numbers, specifically how organisations should best respond to a major breach, particularly in light of the recent attacks on M&S and other retailers, hospitals, even more recently, European airports, and of course, Jaguar Land Rover. What can we learn from those events? Remember to log that you've listened to this episode on the website. They are all grist to your CPD mill. Thanks for being with us.